Your Brahms is so impressive. Your command is so impressive. You have incredible, for me, your technique is so poised. You seem very in command of everything you're doing. It's beautiful. I was so impressed by that.
Thank you.
Your command of it. It's in your hands, as they would say. Uh, I don't always know what um, particular viewpoint is of the music itself. That's and I don't mean to sound so vague, but I felt often that what you were doing needed more of your imagination about the character or the profile or the drama or the singing or the opposite of singing, that each part of the piece has more character, I guess, in a sense that you can I want to hear more of your imagination,
Okay.
how you hear this music and how you then how that affects uh, the rubato, the colors, the articulations, how that comes into informing more precisely how you play it and how you hear it and what you want it to say.
Hmm.
Is that, I don't know if am I speaking, uh, am I saying anything that's comprehensible? I'm not sure.
Yes, no, no, no. I totally understand. I mean, it's a very long movement. Also, the structure is a continuous dialogue between the pianist and the orchestra. So I guess I would feel more inspired maybe playing with an orchestra, perhaps. I don't know. But
For sure, I think you're right, for sure.
actually it's a new piece, so I can understand that my idea it's not that
It's still forming.
pleasing. Yes.
That makes complete sense. And maybe part of it, I agree with you completely. So much of the interest in the piece is your relationship to the orchestra. And so I think you can imagine the orchestra more. And what is your relationship to the orchestra? I don't think it's always the same,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes the orchestra is your friend, your lover. Sometimes it's your enemy. Sometimes you're fighting with the orchestra. Sometimes you're supported by the orchestra. Sometimes you support the orchestra. Your relationship to the orchestra goes through many dimensions in the course of the one movement, right?
Yes.
And maybe that's a kind of a way in for you is to consider more what is your relationship to what the orchestra is doing and how do you play your role. Maybe that could be a way for you to develop your understanding of the piece as you
Yes.
continue to work on it.
Sure.
Um, you've no doubt you've heard many recordings and performances, right?
Quite a lot. Yes. Quite a lot.
So so you're not having trouble hearing the orchestra in your mind.
No, no, not at all.
It's
Yes.
vivid, I would think.
Yes.
Yeah. So even the very beginning, if we just think, what is your relationship to the horn?
It's kind of it's another phrase. I mean, it's another thing, but it's not. I wouldn't say that it's a continuation of the phrase of the horn because the horn is closing its phrase, and but my it's kind of an overture. My is some kind of opening of something. Da
In
da di
simple,
da da, and I rise again.
in a simple observation, what is your material in relation to the horn?
It's an accompaniment. It's something under probably.
I mean something more obvious, more simple.
It's an harmonic function. But we are clearly in B major now. So,
And what happens here?
oh, it's an answer.
There we go.
Yes, it's an answer. Sure.
I think it's worth to notice obvious things.
Yes.
Because, I mean, it can help us, right?
Yes.
The most obvious thing, don't miss. So if you imagine how the horn plays, now you have to imagine for yourself, how much do you want to be an echo of the horn? How much do you want to be like the horn? How much do you want to not be like the horn? If you see what I mean.
Yes.
Now, what is your relationship now becomes a whole fascination because of the obvious thing we can see. That doesn't mean we know what to do.
Yes.
But you have to pick something. Because if you don't, it won't have enough profile. It won't have enough relationship to the horn unless you are conscious of your choices.
Yes.
It does make some sense?
Totally, yes.
Oh, great. Okay, good. It's not easy for me. I'm having trouble finding a way to say these things because it's not so easy, right?
I totally get it because it's also written in the same way, the slur with the staccati. So it's
Exactly.
the same.
Exactly. And what you said first is also true. I don't want to ignore what you said first, which is you do create this harmonic unfolding that the horn cannot do. So that's also an important feature of what you do in addition to the mimic, right?
Yes.
And it's also, I think it's also worth noting that I think this is the same in every edition. Do you have the hairpin in measure 6?
This one?
Yeah.
Yes.
You have the crescendo diminuendo there?
Yes.
Do you have it in bar 3?
No.
Aha! Okay. With Brahms, it's got to mean something because he's careful.
Yes.
He was a good self-editor. So if we know what he wrote, it's a clue to what he's thinking. And isn't it interesting the horn doesn't have it? Both times the horn has no marking like that.
Yes.
What does that mean? What would you do with that information?
Firstly, I will do the crescendo diminuendo. I will try to do it, and maybe the horn is closing. Also here, and I'm opening to do, and I'm opening to.
Beautiful. I love it. I think that's a beautiful idea. Now, and what about bar 3 now?
I'm closing.
I think that's good.
Uh,
So those two phrases are actually yours are actually very different from each other in the spirit that you play it, right?
yes.
Then how do you find um, what are your thoughts about when you come back? Measure 11.
I I've heard many recordings. Many recordings play faster, but I think it can be the same tempo, but more dramatic, of course, more anxious.
And then that makes sense to me too. I totally can understand what you're saying in a positive way. What about then measure 17?
I think it's more free because it's a solo.
And what else about you said 11 and that passage is more dramatic. I agree with you. What happens in the drama at 17?
It's kind of triumph of something.
It's interesting you said it's more free because you're alone, but it also sounds more free because of the maggiore, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. And because it's a culmination of something.
That's nice, right? Yeah, this kind of just what you did with your that was good conducting. Yeah, and I think we you can make something of that. Then what happens? Look, 19, 20, 21, 22, and especially 23.
There is kind of I don't know. It's like something. It's searching something,
Nice,
and then
beautiful,
and
beautiful.
then it finds.
Now that I missed when you played when I listened to your tape.
Okay,
What you just did, I missed.
okay.
I missed that. And what does he mean when he writes poco sostenuto? Because he always says ben legato. So what
It's
does it
more
mean?
grounded.
Esatto.
It's more
Hmm.
grounded. So it's
And
more.
also in tempo. Yeah, I think you're getting somewhere now. Heavier, more
Yes,
weight.
yes.
Can you be uh, more in touch with the conflict between the duple and the triple?
Okay.
In other words, can you do one more? Yeah, exactly. Can you do one more where we feel that you don't? For me, your rubato isn't quite organic enough because I lose the integrity of the triplet. I'm not telling you no rubato, but be careful how it works. That we hear the triplet, the quality of the triplet against the duplet. You mind to try once more?
Yes. But you mean that maybe the right hand also has to be more grounded, more heavier.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
I try one more.
I think that was better. I heard more legato,
Yes, yes.
more connection, more connection.
Okay.
I mean, in a way, you have to explore your role as an opera singer too. You
I
know what I
don't
mean?
at all.
But you can.
Yeah, sure.
On the piano, you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you have to listen in this music. I mean, all the time in our lives, but especially in this piece, how you're singing and how you make it sing is very important. Because sometimes it's not so much about singing, but often it is, right? It's often about the legato, it's about the line, it's about the phrase and the connection, one note to the next. How do we do legato on the piano?
Well, first of all, we can do it physically, trying to stay stick to the keyboard.
But
This
it
might be
actually is an illusion. It makes
but
us
actually,
feel
yes,
better, but might not
with the
work.
sound, of course. You have to do it with the sound.
And what do we have to do with the sound? Really to make legato.
Being coherent with the previous sound.
Exactly. So your ear has to stay with the note the way it decays to know how to play the next note so that it sounds connected.
Sure. Yes.
It's a sensitivity of the ear. And then the ear will tell your hand what to do.
Yes.
So if you're going to try and get a real legato in that left hand,
Mm.
you have to listen how you're connecting the notes. I think you can do even better than you just did.
Okay. I'll try one more. Maybe legato was better, but lacking the right hand maybe now.
Yep. And also, I don't get the shape of the phrase in the left hand. It's not enough to play it louder. It has to have a shape. I think you're getting somewhere. Yeah. And then what happens now with the next thing?
It's a very hard passage, first of all, and a few of the violas, because we cannot stay in perfectly in tempo with what he wrote, with the triplets, and it's impossible. I tried, but I couldn't.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible either. But what I missed when I heard you in the recording, it's true that all he says is piano, crescendo. But I don't think this crescendo is one even grade. I think you have to do this crescendo this way, based on the harmonic tension. If you see what I mean.
Yes,
Some of those harmonies have more spice than others, right? You have more tension or more spice and then less. And I think that if you wiggle up the crescendo instead of try to do 4 bars louder, 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 it can also affect the colors you're using along the way. Because I think if this passage you play only with one color, it doesn't sustain our interest.
You want me to try?
Would you like to?
Yes, I will try. Il piano. Something like this.
Yeah, you need to get more comfortable with it, right? More command. Be careful. One thing you tend to do, and I noticed it earlier too, is the second note in the right hand. Either the single note or the triad, but where the right hand is alone, don't rush.
Okay.
Don't cheat it. You hear how you play a little bit da da dee da 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 dee da. That's
I've noticed.
better.
Yeah, but maybe could help to think about like a. Um,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I like it.
okay.
Also, now you were getting it more even. Did you ever practice it with your eyes closed?
No.
You should try it.
Well, yes.
You discover interesting things
Mm.
about sensation, because when your hand and your arm starts to know, you don't have to look. It's a somatic intelligence. Uh, it was things like this. I find it's often very interesting to shut your eyes and see how you do, because you can discover things about your technique that way, and what you're in tune with, what you're in touch with, literally in touch with.
Okay.
And Garrick Olson tipped me off to that. I was playing Mozart D minor, and you know that wicked thing in the second movement. That's what he told me. Practice that with your eyes closed. You'll be okay. When you have to do this kind of leaping. So I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Then, should we go forward again?
Yeah.
Would you tell me what you think of bar 73?
Um, it's again, it's the same phrase of the beginning. It's something that starts from there and gets to elsewhere. Gets elsewhere. I don't know. Yes, it's the same. Ti da da ti da da da. But
Now, point out the obvious for me. What's different? We know what's the same. What's different?
uh, the the progression, the development of the phrase. It's complete. It works on.
Great, great.
Again.
And now, would you play for me only the bass, not the whole left hand, just the bass line?
Yes, it's going down. Yes, it's just yes.
It's great, right?
Yes.
So, can you play it with those two things in mind?
Yes.
Beautiful. That had a real trajectory.
More tri-dimensional.
Yes, exactly. And you waited to let it get bigger and bigger. You waited. It was great. I really think that's an important thing there. Not to open it up too fast,
Okay. Okay.
dynamically.
Yes.
You know the generally the idea for a crescendo or a diminuendo or a ritardando or an accelerando is it's not an arithmetic progression, right? It's always better if you do 1, 2, 5, 8, 13, 21 than if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in terms of degree. And then what if we go ahead again to a 104?
Yes.
How would you describe the relationship between you and the orchestra here? Like the way you
It's
thought
an
about the
answer.
horn at the beginning. Sorry, go ahead.
It's an answer. Da da di da 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 di da da. It's kind of an answer.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know.
Huh?
Maybe it's obvious also here. It's obvious.
Yeah. And is, what I missed when you played is the flute and the clarinet do something kind of pure. Fa, do, si, la, sol, fa. But then you do something that's much more emotional.
Oh, okay.
I think you don't have to agree with me, but I think you have to make some choice like that, if you know what I mean.
I I I I want I would like to ask you maybe a question because the first phrase here, my phrase,
Uh huh.
Brahms didn't write dolce, but the following phrase it writes dolce.
Yeah,
Should this mean that I'm following the dolce of the orchestra, or my sound should be different? And in this case, dolce is less, more, because in Chopin, for example, dolce is less, but in Brahms, I feel that dolce is kind of more,
I agree with you.
more.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know if we're right.
Yes, I know. We should ask her Brahms.
Exactly. But I've come to the same conclusion.
Mm.
Other things in Brahms are more clearly, we know when he writes poco sostenuto, he means something about tempo. We know if he writes poco forte, that is a certain kind of meaning.
Yes.
Um, he's the only composer I know who uses PF instead of FP,
Yes.
and that's poco forte and things like that. But the dolce, it's not so obvious. Maybe there's somebody in the world who knows, but I've never met anyone who can tell me the truth about that. But I agree with you. So I would warm it up and use the 16th notes to your advantage.
More. And then the second one.
Yes, yes, beautiful. I love that. And then could we think a little bit about 128?
Hmm. Yeah, another difficult passages, I have to say. But of course, I'm under the orchestra here because I should play very lightly, leggero.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if you seem to have pretty good command of it. Do you want to try it and get it more with more leggerezza?
More leggero. And another thing that mm, I was in doubt is the direction of this. Should it be tra-ri, tra-ra, tra, or tira, tira, tira?
What do you think today?
Maybe it's tia, 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 tia. It's like tia, tia. It's not tia, tia, tia.
I agree again. Because I think, you could, if you really go to the last, you can end up with an elephant in a tutu.
Okay, I'm trying. Mm. Something like this.
That'll come. That'll come. You have the right approach, I think.
Better, yes.
Then can we look at 146?
Uh-huh. Yes.
What's the character here, do you think?
Quite angry also. It's kind of desperate.
And what happens in 148?
It's the reiteration of this is it continues to get angrier, to get
Oh,
desperate, more desperate.
now I finally found something we can argue about.
Okay. No, please tell me because it's just forte, so it shouldn't be actually not that committed.
I like your notion that there's something Sturmish in 146.
Uh-huh.
If I heard you right, it has this
Yes.
angry, maybe even, yeah. So, but for me, 148, we shift the mood quite a bit.
Okay, it becomes more dolce.
Do you feel that in the harmony?
Yeah, probably yes. Try.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works better.
That was nice.
Yes, yes.
I think you can use the left-hand triplets more for sonority. I mean, you have to sing the top, but beautiful. And then what about 159?
Now it's very now it's very desperate.
That's one way to put it, yes. Uh, but here, are you the one suffering or the one making someone else suffer?
Maybe suffering because of the lips.
Maybe for sure.
Yes, the intention is to make someone suffer. I mean,
There's something about this that's a bit unkind.
yes, unkind. Yes.
But it doesn't have to be martellato. I don't think myself that it doesn't require any ugliness. I don't think.
Okay. Okay.
But there's some, if you can find that there's some way to get this incredibly strong, articulate, but the sound is not harsh. I think that's the way it should be in my imagination. Often it's played much more hammered. And I think there's more grandeur in the character here than that, personally. That's my opinion, just my opinion.
No, I agree. Also, from a technical point of view, maybe trying to save some energy for the big crescendo.
Yes.
Can make sense.
Yes. Yep. So to remember one forte and to go for a quality of sound that is strong rather than aggressive, I think is a good thing. Because with the ben marcato, with the accents, with the staccatos, it invites something that it's easy to go too far, I think. Then what about 215, 215?
It's a different Ben Marcato because it's more. It's kind of spooky, maybe.
I would love to hear you do that.
It's more. Yes.
Can you listen to the volume between the dotted note and the 16th? Just see if you're doing really what you want. Be sure your ear is listening to the strength of the relationship between the long and the short note. I hear your ear working.
Yes, should be longer.
Much better, I think.
Yes, yes.
You know, often with, it's an interesting thing, often with string instruments, the opposite happens. Dee, da, 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 da. But on the piano, we easily do dee, da, 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 da. Yeah. So you just have to make sure you're really keep this alive, your ear. That was great. Can you take a look now? 3, 5, 5.
Yes. Solo, the solo, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about that?
Well, for me, it's all about the singing of the top line,
Mm-hmm.
and the shape has to carry the line, rather than just.
Ti, ta, ta, ti.
Thank you. That, not that.
It's difficult.
Already better.
Yes, yes,
Already better.
yes. Can I try one more time?
Yeah, sure. Much better. And now I think you can take more advantage when the bass moves. Get it in relationship to the upper voice singing. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Do you want to try the very beginning again now?
Okay.
It's wicked hard to start this, right?
Mm-hmm. But should I do the horn also? Of course, I cannot finish the phrase because I have to play.
I'll be the horn. Si, do, re, mi, re, do, re. Okay, the reason I wanted to go back, can now, can you listen to the shape you're making with the triplet in the right at the end of the bar?
Yes.
Just try once more. Si, do, re, mi, re, do, re. Do one more, would you? Si, do, re, mi, re, do, re. Si, fa, mi, re, do, si, do, fa. Yeah, it's more beautiful to
You
me.
are doing more legato than
Yeah,
I was doing. Okay.
yeah. And I think that's good.
Ti, da.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So that's not it's essentially a sustained articulation, not a dry one.
Yes, Mr. Nabore always tells me that the slur with the staccati means rubato in the classical style, the classic language. So maybe Brahms took it like okay, you have to do rubato now because Brahms never writes rubato in any case. Uh, it, Chopin sometimes wrote rubato. Also
That's right.
used to write rubato, but we know that Brahms used to play rubato, but he never writes rubato.
Did you hear that famous recording of him playing G minor ballade?
Yes, also there is the first Hungarian dance, I think,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's very
It's amazing, right?
yes, it's yeah.
Also on a string instrument, it's the yo do 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 yo do 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 do
Mhm.
rather than. I mean, it's tricky because not everybody uses the marking in the same way. Stravinsky writes a slur with dots and you should play very, very short. But I think in this music, it's the right thing to go the other way.
Okay.
Beautiful. It was such a pleasure to hear you. I
Well, it's a
just,
pleasure to work with you. You're
it,
very, very
your,
nice.
this is, but your command is very, it's very inspiring to hear you.
I have to learn a lot, but yes, I'm working still.